As I'm laying on the ground telling you and actually dying in front of you and trying to explain to you that I need help from you, I'm being threatened to be kicked out.
Thousands of you saw this post describing a near-death experience.
A woman warning others how she was treated after healthcare professionals learned about her previous mental health diagnosis.
If you have a mental health diagnosis, it may change the way you're going to be treated when you walk in with a medical emergency.
She says that diagnosis she had received years prior led EMTs to dismiss her ruptured fallopian tube and write it off as an anxiety attack.
She says that mistake almost cost her life.
WAND's Alyssa Patrick sat down with Heather Mendenhall to find out the story behind the post.
If I hadn't made the decision to lay on the ground, I would have waited in that emergency room until I was dead.
In late January, Heather Mendenhall ended up on the floor of the St. Mary's ER, struggling to breathe.
At the time, I didn't know why, but it's because my abdomen was full of blood.
She was suffering a medical emergency, but says staff failed to recognize her condition.
And at that point is when I realized that they think that I'm throwing a tantrum.
It all started on Thursday afternoon when Mendenhall was 8 weeks pregnant.
I was cleaning my kitchen and I felt what I can describe knowingly as a contraction.
She immediately called her sister and partner, thinking she was having a miscarriage.
I had a lot of pain. It was starting to get hard to breathe.
She was actually suffering with an ectopic pregnancy.
We want a pregnancy to grow inside the uterus. If it's outside the uterus, that's considered ectopic. The vast majority of those would be within the tubes, but they can be in other locations as well.
Dr. Rominger is an OBGYN with Decatur Memorial Hospital. He says ectopic pregnancies can cause a fallopian tube to rupture.
Pregnancy causes a big increase in blood supply to the area, and so a ruptured pregnancy can become life-threatening very quickly.
But at the time, all she knew, the pain was unbearable, and her sister called 911.
Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
Yeah, my sister called me having some excruciating pain in her stomach and her right shoulder, and she's saying she feels like she's gonna die. She can't breathe very well. She can't move.
Many times the ectopic pregnancy may not have symptoms in the beginning, but ultimately pain begins to develop. That may be more generalized and then later begin to localize to the left or right side.
EMTs soon arrived to take Mendenhall to St. Mary's. But at some point, she says paramedics asked if she suffered from anxiety.
I had been diagnosed with anxiety in 2015. I said yes, and after that, it was kind of like a change in the tone of the room.
Mendenhall says paramedics then suggested she might actually be having an anxiety attack.
He told me to transfer myself from the gurney to a wheelchair, and I told him I couldn't sit up because I couldn't breathe.
Once at the hospital, Mendenhall says she was placed into a wheelchair and brought into the ER waiting room.
I was like, I cannot sit upright for 4.5 hours. I'm thinking minutes at most is where I'm at.
She decided to lay on the floor where she could finally catch her breath. But that's when she says staff threatened to call security.
Another nurse said that I couldn't just come into the emergency room and throw myself on the ground to be seen before all the other people that also need to be seen.
Afraid of what would happen if she wasn't seen by a doctor, she tried to pull herself up.
I tried to pull myself into a wheelchair. I just kind of got my elbows up onto it and tried to pull, and that's when I lost consciousness.
She was then rushed into triage, given an ultrasound, and her OB was paged for emergency surgery.
Typically, once the tube is ruptured, we need to do surgery. Sometimes we can save the tube and do a tube sparing procedure, just remove the pregnancy tissue itself. Sometimes if there's sufficient damage, then the tube itself needs to be removed as well.
Mendenhall's right fallopian tube was removed, and she's still healing. Now she's concerned about any future medical treatment being affected by her anxiety diagnosis.
But I have a mental health diagnosis. Is my medical treatment always going to be based on whether or not I have that diagnosis?
But Mendenhall is clear, patients should share their medical history, and she believes it's up to medical providers to improve their training.
I need to be aware that, people have these diagnoses, a lot of people, and it doesn't change the fact that your body can also have a medical emergency.
Mendenhall complained to HSHS, and in a letter from CEO Teresa Rutherford, HSHS says, quote, "We have reviewed our process and appropriate action have been taken in an effort to prevent a similar situation from occurring in the future. We would like to again express our deepest apology to you for any unsatisfactory experience you may have had at St. Mary's." Reporting in Decatur, Alyssa Patrick, WAND News.